Hey guys, how's it going and welcome back. So today I want to talk to you guys about guitar tuning pegs or tuners. I have a video on my channel about how to fix tuners that are loose, okay? It's basically quick repair or you got a strip screw. So if you got a loose tuner where it's kind of wobbling back and forth a little bit, if you have a type of tuner that has this nut and washer system on it, every time you change your strings, but even once in a while, just check the tension on this nut, because as you use your guitar and as wood shrinks and expands, okay, that nut can actually loosen off, which can give you some play in here, especially if your screw in the back is not that tight. So I would, definitely suggest tightening that screw at the back first, and then if you have this nut and washer system, then also just give that a little bit of a snug up. And I've gone through a little bit about this in other guitar videos as well, talking about that when you change strings. I think I got a how to change strings video that actually goes over adjusting the nut style. Now if you have one of these tuners that has the ferrule type system, these are just pressed in and that's it. One shot, one deal, away you go. So you have to rely on the screws. But the screws will actually do the same thing. They loosen as wood shrinks, and you got to snug them up, and they expand again eventually, that sort of thing. And eventually those screw holes will actually strip, especially if you over tighten. So it's very important to never over tighten. Just put them until they're just snug, and that should be more than enough. However, I've been getting some questions lately about tuning keys, more specific. People have been on that repair video where I show you how to use toothpicks to fill up the hole because it's stripped and you can put your screw back in. And they've been asking questions because they tune their tuner and they keep turning the key and nothing's happening. Well, there's different styles of tuners as far as how they put the tuning key on, okay, to the actual tuning peg system, okay. Now, commonly what does happen, I wish I had a Wilkinson tuner here to show you as well, but the Wilkinson tuners and other tuners that have like just a plastic tuning peg on them, and there's no screw here, okay, basically that's going to be this sort of thing. Now this is a metal one, but the plastic ones, they're pressed on, right? And so over time, especially with age and a lot of use, because you're going to get a lot of use out of your tuners, right? These things can actually let go inside, and the key can come right off, or it'll just strip inside, and you can turn that key all you want and nothing's going to happen. Or under basically no load, it will tune the tuner, but as soon as tension gets on that string, you're going to keep spinning and spinning. And there is absolutely nothing you can do about it in this kind of a tuner with the metal top because it's not repairable. So you have to replace actually your entire set of tuners most times, because you just can't buy a single tuner in general. There are some companies that makes some very high-end tuners where yes, you could get just an individual tuner. But otherwise, you're generally out of luck, okay? So you're going to have to keep that in mind. Now, I personally do not like Wilkinson tuners. Some people do, some people don't. I'm one of the ones that just really doesn't like them. And I really don't care for this style either, especially with not having an adjuster here, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Now, these ferrule systems, these washers will actually wear out oblonged over time because there's a lot of tension pulling against that shaft. And because tuners can only be made to a certain quality range, they're generally never 100% perfectly, tight, okay, where they just can't move. They are going to have a little bit of out of roundness. Could be very super minor, could be a lot depending on how cheap your tuner is, right? But these things definitely are the worst that there are out there on the planet, in my opinion. I'm going to see if I can get this cap off of here. Now, you also have what's called an open back tuner. That means you don't have a cover. So you can actually see this. Sometimes you can just tighten up this screw and that will actually help get the tension back on the entire shaft. But also, if you're experiencing some tuning issues and it's not this part, you can tighten up this screw. And you will find that even sealed tuners do have this screw inside. Although a sealed tuner is a lot harder to take apart and then try putting it back together again later, that's a real nightmare. And it's very difficult to do at best. I've actually done it a couple of times successfully in order to tighten it up, and it's been fine afterwards, but it is a real pain, and I'm not about to go into a video with you guys on that one because I really don't recommend even trying it, because you can actually damage the tuner if you're not careful when you're trying to pop the bottom cover off of these things. Now, other types of tuners that we have, just put this one aside over here. We've got locking tuners. Now, locking tuners come in various different types of styles nowadays too. There's lockers that lock on the top, but a common one is actually this with the thumb wheel, and you pull the shaft. You can pull the shaft right out of this. Okay. Now, these have a little nut here that holds the gear down, and sometimes you need to snug these up. Now, on really super cheap tuners, I would probably say don't tighten those up. If you buy a set of tuners that are inexpensive and you're having issues, just send them back and get a replacement set. Because messing with that nut, the shaft is actually quite thin, is what I found on these things. I actually have a whole bag of these for parts. With that thin shaft, that nut can easily strip the threads because it's very cheap metal that they're using. Higher quality ones would be better, and you could actually get away with snugging them up. But you got to watch how tight you put things. That's one of the biggest things I can't say enough. You just don't over torque stuff so that you're going like, you know, to try and tighten it, because that's bad. Now, with this kind of tuners, well, we also have the nut and washer system. And I've seen nut and washer systems now too on tuners that actually have no adjustment, or they're just a plastic tuner that's on there and it's compression fit. Now, on Wilkinson Tuners with the plastic style, StewMac actually, from what I understand anyways, I don't know if they still do, I don't go to their site that much, but they were showing videos on how to actually put a new one on and repair that tuner. It can be done as long as your shaft isn't bent. So you can actually get the parts, watch his video, he'll show you, walk you through it and on how to do it, and you can fix your tuner. The way I look at it, it's going to happen again. Eventually it's going to happen again. You might as well just get rid of the junky tuners and just put on good tuners that have maintenance capabilities. Okay. Now, another thing with this locking style tuner is you're also going to notice there's a screw here that you can actually remove, because you can change to any kind of key style that you want that has a screw-in hole. They're all pretty much universal that I've come across. I have not come across one that's not universal fit. In fact, my Epiphone Les Paul came with gold Grover tuners on it, and it had this kidney bean style or kidney tuner style key, and I didn't like them. I hate that style. So I wanted the tulip style vintage look, right? Kind of like what would come with your Wilkinson tuners on Les Pauls, right? I like that style. I just don't like plastic. I wanted metal, and I wanted gold, of course, to match the gold tuners. So no big deal. And so I was able to actually find a place online where I could buy just that piece, and I was able to change them out and put it back together, and away I go. And it's just a matter of pulling the screw. Now, when you pull this screw, you're going to notice that everything's going to get really sloppy. There's a metal washer here, and then there's a plastic washer. Now, this screw is not just to keep this key in place, okay? Because if it's too loose, it's just your guitar is not going to stay in tune. So you do need to snug that up a little bit. And you can snug this up a little further beyond, because some of us really prefer a stiffer turning tuner, and also it gives it a much more positive lockup when tuning up or tuning down. It relieves a lot of that gap space that you'll find, or dead space, right, when you're going backwards and then back up again. So that's actually quite handy. But as a rule, if you want your guitar to play in tune and stay in tune longer, when you're tuning your guitar, if you go above pitch, always tune below and then back up to pitch very slowly. Now, the less revolution to 1, so 14 to 1, 18 to 1, 24 to 1, the bigger number, okay, the lower that bigger number is, okay, so 14 to 1, even a small movement creates a large amount of movement in the shaft, right? So the higher the ratio tuner, the better in my books. I'm actually going to be swapping some of my guitars to super high ratio tuners eventually, just because I want to be able to, turn this like 5 times and maybe move it just a little bit, more precision tuning. But anyway, certainly with this, this has one screw style and then the top, okay? And these are adjustable. Now another standard tuner that you're always going to be used to, and it's the most common tuner out there for one that's a sealed tuner with nut and washer system, is this. And same thing, it's got a screw that you can pull out. You can change this tuner to anything you want. Now this is for an electric guitar that has inline 6, okay, so 6 tuners straight across the headstock, and that's why you have such a small tuning piece. So when you're ordering replacements that are different, keep in mind the dimensions that you have to work with from one tuner to the next for spacing, because if you buy something like a kidney tuner that's this big, okay, in comparison, it's likely not going to work for you unless you have the space to allow that. So just something to keep in mind. Again, this is a kind where you can adjust the screw for tension as well as just changing it off. Now, if you ever break these plastic washers, you're definitely in a lot of problem, because I've not found a place yet anywhere on the internet where I can buy just the washers. So generally what happens is, oh, can we go to the manufacturer? Likely not, because manufacturers, unless they're making their own tuners, are not going to have any parts. Okay, so you might want to get yourself a really dirt cheap set of tuners and rob that washer from it, unless you have a friend with a lathe that can make you one of these. And I actually had a set. I didn't want to replace the whole set, and a friend of mine had a lathe because I don't have one anymore, and he actually was able to make me that washer for me, and that was really great. I really appreciated that. Saved me a whole lot of money on a new set of tuners. But anyways, these are your typical sealed backs. Now these are the ones where, I said you can pop this cover out, but it's kind of a tricky thing because you have to loosen the screw, create some slop, and get that worm gear to just go sloppy. And then you're going to have to create a tool in order to punch down at this, and you're going to have to set this on some kind of a jig as well in order to go kapang just the right way to just pop that cover. It's the only way it's coming off. And then you could tighten up the screw underneath. On cheap tuners, I would never recommend doing that. If it's a really expensive set of tuners and you can't buy just a replacement tuner, that's something where you might want to give it a go. But you're still chancing breaking the tuner. And I'm giving you all this information and telling you this stuff because somebody is going to ask either way eventually. So get it out of the way first. So, do I recommend trying this? No. Do not try and disassemble a sealed tuner. It is just not worth the problems that it can cause in the end. And like I said, you can definitely damage it even further instead of trying to fix the problem. So, see if the company has a single tuner. If it's a high-end tuner, you might be able to get a replacement tuner. Okay? Otherwise, a whole brand new set is what you're going to be looking at. When these things fail, you're definitely looking at a completely new set. It's just the way it goes. And I find these tuners too, with the open back or even with this little hidey cover, other than the fact that tuning stability is horrifying on them and they break down in here too easily, they also break down in here a lot easier because they're very weakly built, I find. Now, this is one of the tuners that came off of a Les Paul. Now, there's nothing wrong with these tuners. I have the whole set, and they're just like brand spanking new. However, I don't like them. I didn't want them on the guitar, so I changed them over to sealed tuners because I prefer the tuning stability and the ability to adjust that screw for tension, and of course longevity comes in. And I've never yet seen one of these style of tuners ever yet wear out myself. okay? And I've heard of very few that ever have worn out either. So they're pretty durable when you're getting into a sealed tuner. Locking tuners, they're kind of a pig in a poke. You know, if you buy the really cheap ones, you could get a really good set. It does happen a number of times. Or you can spend more money and get a better and better and better quality set. Like I said, there are different styles. There's the common button style like this, where it unscrews the shaft. And you only got to unscrew this enough just to get the string in and out. And then of course you have the type that has a capped style lock over the top instead of on the bottom. I don't know if those things are any really good. Some people like them, some people don't again. And there's also a style, instead of just having just the shaft alone, there's also a little ball bearing in there. Now those I think are like the ultimate style. One thing you can run into in a problem with these locking tuners that are like this kind of a style, ball bearing or not, is when you're tuning your guitar, that whole area is actually moving, right? And with use back and forth of tuning your guitar up and down string changes, these things are, and even without changing the strings, these caps can actually loosen off just because of the amount of tension, because they're not so well perfectly made as you might think, because they have to create a narrow passage in here, and then this whole shaft moves and it sits on top of the gear. So if the gear is actually not proper, okay, as you're turning, it can actually cause the back thing to unscrew, and then of course you're going to lose your string. I personally do not care for locking tuners. They are fine for a fast string change, but I think you should still be putting at least a couple wraps on there regardless. I don't see the benefits in more stable tuning. Like I said, I've tried these. I own a set. I've had several sets. And I've yet to find any real benefit for tuning stability with them. They're just great for quick and easy string changes and not having to worry about learning to actually do a lock wrap on your string in order to have it locked into the tuner properly. Some people just don't want to learn that, so they just go, oh, locking tuners, just thread it through and way I go, hey, too easy. If you learn how to wrap the string properly, there's a couple of different methods, and all of them actually work quite well. I do what's called the over-under wrap, so my first wrap goes over the top, and then any additional wraps go underneath, and I've never yet had a problem with tuning stability, other than it could be just the guitar itself, because guitars are made out of wood and they move all the time. So that creates tuning stability no matter what. But I've never had any problems since doing the over-under wrap style threading of your string to your tuner. But anyways, there you go. So I just wanted to touch base on tuners and different types, good and bad points, you know. This is, to me, got nothing but bad points. I don't like them, but they do come with really cheap guitars. Locking tuners, they are good for fast string changes, but I would still recommend putting a couple wraps on each string if you want to have guaranteed stability, because if this backs off because of use, then your string is just going to fly off on you, and that's going to really suck. And then of course you've got this style here, which is the most common type of design, okay, and I actually prefer these. Even in a cheap set like these things work really great, and I put like about a $10 set on my Epiphone Les Paul Special 2, because that was the guitar that actually these came off of here, and I put a really cheap set of sealed back tuners on. I think they're about 10 bucks, and they're working great. Great tuning stability, no problems at all whatsoever with them. So hey, not bad. It wasn't an expensive guitar, and at the time, that's a set of tuners that I happen to have in my collection, so it saved me from going out and buying a set. But I will eventually be upgrading them to probably Grovers, because I'm really getting addicted to that guitar. I'm really loving it. It's a great little guitar. Anyways, that's all I got for you, so let me know what you guys think, and we'll definitely catch you on the next video. See ya!